Hey there, and welcome back to the third and final module for our Pivot Q512 playback and show. This is going to talk about what we do now that we've already recorded our cues, and before that we went ahead and set the console up and did all the addressing and patching. Now we're just going to play back our cues and turn it into a show. Basically, it's the general operations of the console. Let's get started. In simplest of terms, your show is in a series of cues on the playbacks, and we can just push this button and cycle through the cues on that playback. Now, if it is on the top level of playbacks, that means that it is under fader control up above, or that it is under bump button control up above. If it's on the bottom layer, that means you can only activate or run the cues. There's no fader control up above, with one exception, and that is when we have a Grandmaster. So we're going to go in and look at one of our first setups, which is how to set up a Grandmaster. The first thing I'm going to do is hit release to unload that cue. I'm going to push and hold menu. I want to go under setup, and I want to go under controller configuration. Now, all of our sliders can either be a playback master or a group master. A group master, in the simplest sense, is one of those groups we made earlier. In the last module, we made a group of lights, and I can actually use this slider to just affect the intensity of that group of lights. Or, as I've already done with this one, I can change it so that it goes between the group or something else, which is called the Grandmaster, and DBO, which stands for dead blackout. So now that I've selected that on slider number 6, we're going to be able to use that slider as a Grandmaster. So let's take a look at that. Okay, so now that I've recorded that, I can turn on as many faders as I want, run as many cues as I want, but my last fader is a Grandmaster. It is now the overall control of every single playback, including the bottom row this time. So if we want to, I can use this to do the overall intensity control or dead blackout. I push that, the lights go away right away. That is great when I need to catch that downbeat at the end of the song and have the lights just black out. Let's talk about a couple more advanced features we can set up in playback. Now again, let's talk about the release button. The release button is how we unload our playbacks or how we clear the show. I press release once and then I select the playback I want to get rid of, or I double click it and all my playback's empty. Now from within my editor screen, what I want to do is go into my cue list screen, and at this point I am looking at the cue list for the fader I've been into. All I need to do is push select, and then any one of the other playbacks, it'll change to that. But let's stay in this playback for now, and we can do a couple of things inside here. First of all, I push and hold menu, and now I've got different controllers and configurations again. So at this point, I got my slider configuration, button color, etc. Or I can do different things with the cue. I can load the cue, which puts it back into the controller to do the programming. I can move it, rename it, etc. So I can do all the different manipulation of the cue itself. Again, this is something we did earlier in programming, but it's kind of nice if you fill up all of your playbacks and you need to worry about other pages. So what's a page? Well, it's our next button. Page now lets me choose which page I'm working with, and we notice at the top it says page 1, expansion page 2, expansion 2, page 3. So what we're going to do is when I push page, all I need to do is choose one of the playbacks. So if I want page 3, I'm literally going to push page, and then over here I'm going to push playback 3. So now I am on page 3. Expansion 1 is on page 4. Expansion 2 is on page 5. I don't have expansion 2 on this console, but it still loads it up. Now you're asking me what are pages about. Pages are a way of quickly reloading all my playbacks with new cues. Now if you have a cue running in a playback when you change the page, that playback will not change until you release it. Once I release it, it will go to the new page. So this way you don't slam your show and all of a sudden change everything on stage, but it's a great way to change into a new set of pages. I use this a lot when I'm doing concerts, and I have a different page for every song. So all my playbacks are set up for that song. So pages are an advanced way to set up a bunch of cues and cue holders and be able to get to them. So we've talked about release, we've talked about page, we already know about clear, we talked about to select, which is how I select which playback I'm working on. We already know store from before, and we already know menu. So I'm going to go back out to editor, and at that point I'm ready to run my show. So in a nutshell, that is basically what it takes for playback operation of this console. We began with Module 1, which was talk about patching, addressing, and setting up our fixtures in the console to work with them. Then we worked into Module number 2, which was programming and some of the advanced programming with cues, effects, etc. And in this module, we went over playback and show. So now at this point, I've got a show, everything's happening, and that is the Pivot Q512. Thank you for watching, and we'll see you soon.